In this lesson, I'm going to talk about qualitative visuals, those that aren't based on real numbers and data, but more on different ways of organizing information and ideas. We'll talk about diagrams, charts, custom diagrams, and visual metaphors. First, let's start with diagrams. Probably the most common one is the circular diagram. As you can see in these examples, there are many different ways of organizing the information with circles. A more concrete circle-based diagram is the Venn diagram. It uses circles and their intersections to help visually represent the similarities and the differences between two or more concepts. There are also a few other kinds of the original Venn diagram. One that replaces circles with other shapes, like ovals and rectangles, to be able to change the meaning slightly and add more concepts to the diagram. And the other one that is based on the idea of intersections as well, but combines the circles in a more abstract way. Next, we have a pyramid diagram. They are often used to visualize needs, from the most essential ones on the bottom to the optional ones on the top. The origin of this diagram is Maslow's pyramid, the famous chart of the human needs. But it can be totally adjusted to any other concept. Feel free to add icons and colors to make it more visually striking. Next, we have a funnel diagram. It has originally come from marketing, and it used to visualize a buying process. In the next example, you can see an animation that describes perfectly its functioning. You can also see a funnel diagram displayed horizontally, like here. In case of this slide, placing it like this helps to tell the story more effectively in a presentation format. I see horizontal funnel being used on websites a lot because of the format too. Next, we have process diagrams. It is also often used in presentation design and has many different uses and forms, from visualizing a particular method or user journey to step-by-step guides and instructions. Adding illustrations and mockups will make it look more custom and visual. As you can see, you can make it as simple or as complex as you need by adding multiple directions, icons, and steps. Next, we have arrow diagram, also often used in presentation, and its goal is to again show linear process and steps. Sometimes it can be linked to a timeline or describe different phases of a project, for example. Another handy tool for presentation design is list diagram. It can contain different numbers of boxes and can be accompanied by icons and illustration, like in these examples. Now, timelines can be as simple as this one, or they can also display a multi-layered process. Notice that it is very similar to the process diagram, but in this case, we have an actual timeline with dates and periods of time, whereas the process diagram is organized by steps. Timelines on websites are often displayed vertically. Next, we have a ladder diagram. It works a bit like a timeline, but we can add value to each step. In other words, the further you go, the higher you get. This visual metaphor is often used to measure success or intensity. This next graph has 4 axes representing 2 opposite values on each side, kind of like the spider chart that we saw earlier. The 4 spaces in between are used for positioning. The competitor slide is when you will see this diagram used more often. Instead of circles, you can use it to position the logos of your competitors. Next, we have parameters. I'm not sure why, but this is one of my favorite diagrams. Each line represents 2 opposite values, and you can position the point on a scale between them. I think it's a great way to translate more abstract values into more tangible and visual language instead of just words. I use this diagram mostly to translate my mood boards in creative proposals to my clients. Now let's talk about charts. First, we have the organizational chart. This is the one that initiates with one concept, and then as it goes down, it splits and forks into more concepts. The most common example is the family tree, but now it can also be used to illustrate a company's hierarchy and organization. On the other hand, a flow chart shows connection between elements, but without such defined hierarchy. Next, we have a binary decision chart, also known as yes-no chart. This is another kind of flow chart that is composed on questions and possible answers that leads you to a decision. And lastly, we have a mind map. Mind map explores a concept by assigning different associations to it. Sometimes you will find mind maps with multiple concept explorations that are connected between them, like in these examples. All these charts and graphs are great tools to represent an idea, but sometimes for a really complex concept, you will have to mix and match different elements and create custom diagrams. In these examples, the design mostly contains circles and lines, but when grouped together smartly, they create a whole new shape and tell a story. And then, to push your visualization even further, you can use visual metaphors, such as symbols to represent direction, like arrows, or positions with circles, and metaphors replacing the whole concept with an icon or an image. In the additional resources to this unit, you will find a complete presentation with all the examples. Please take your time to analyze them closely to see all the possibilities that you have. In the next lesson, we're going to talk about how to decide which one to use.